Hey guys, it is Tuesday the 31st. We're getting this ready for day 6 for our e-learning. Hopefully I'm seeing some guys and I reached out to a lot of you guys that did the stock market stuff with the just responding. And I tried to respond a little bit more personally, to some of you guys, ask how you're doing, and it's cool to get you guys' response and just kind of realize that there's other humans out there. So if I'm being honest with you, and I'm sure a lot of you guys in the same boat, it's been pretty challenging here these last 2 weeks. I'm sure you guys have your challenges if you have siblings and parents around all the time, and for me it's more so probably my younger kids. I being honest with you, yesterday, even the day before, things were kind of getting real, and so I struggle with that a little bit, and kind of missing some things that I'm used to doing for entertainment or whatever. And anyway, if that's how you're feeling, hopefully it's not the majority of the time. Hopefully it's the minority of the time, but that's all right. But try to turn on a positive face, turn that frown upside down. Try to learn a little econ today, and we'll try to distract ourselves a little bit. Most of you guys are doing a good job. You're seeing that there's not necessarily too many long assignments that we have been giving you guys. A lot of that is because, well, we don't usually have a lot of the long assignments. There's actually an activity that we usually do within class, almost like a project, over the course of these last couple chapters, and obviously we're missing out on that. So there wasn't necessarily tons of work to do anyway. And again, I'm kind of a believer that if you kind of jump through the hoops and get some things done and show me that you're getting some of that participation stuff, I can accept that. So here's what I want you to return to me today. Okay, I want you to read through this question, and I just want you to email it to me. Okay, the email is the best thing. Try not to reply to the original email. Okay, email me with a new email. Just call it Day 6 Economics. Okay, but I want you to answer these questions right here. All right, and then it'll make a little bit of sense as we kind of go through what we're doing. So anyway, look at this. Pause it. Write some things down. Make sure you jump through those hoops. Write what you need to write. Okay, we're talking about business. Competition today, and how much competition there are within certain industries. So the difference between an industry and a business would be like a business can produce anything, but an industry is going to be something that have similar producers, okay, or producers that produce very similar stuff, and maybe sometimes not so similar stuff. Okay, so we're going to talk about like the difference between being McDonald's in the fast food industry versus being like in the automobile industry, like with Ford and Chevrolet, and then anything else in between. So anyway, that's kind of where we're headed. Make sure you get this stuff written down, email it to me, okay, and we will move forward from there. So first things first, let's talk about what a business has to do. So sometimes, and you got to take your own notes, sorry. I didn't get a chance to get the note packets filled out. You can take these notes. You can take a picture of it. I don't really care how you do it, okay? I would be lying if I said I know exactly what a test is going to look like if we get to that particular point. But you do want to have access to these. You can take screenshots. You can do whatever. But again, make sure that you're writing these down one way or the other, okay? So first of all, business's number one goal is they've got to make a profit, and sometimes we get this term profit mixed up with what is probably should be considered revenue. Okay, and so the difference between profit and revenue is profit is money that I make after I take out the costs, and a lot of times, businesses will say, "Hey, I'm making tons of money." Right? Or I'm bringing in tons of money, but that doesn't mean that they're making a lot of profit. Okay, and so a business is first of all gonna operate where their profit is maximized. They're not going to overproduce because that's going to cut into their profit. They would rather pay their workers less money for less time, right? And set a price that is competitive. The last thing a supermarket wants to do is put a bunch of stuff on sale. Okay, but the reason they do put it on sale is because they can't get rid of it otherwise, and they have to make somewhat of a profit or cut into those costs as they move forward. Okay, so Anyway, like I said, a like a business like McDonald's would be like, okay, the revenue they get from a double cheeseburger would be $1.79, but the profit they make on that double cheeseburger is, I mean, it could be whatever, right? 60 cents, 75 cents, whatever, depending on the materials and the stuff that goes into it. Okay. So anyway, I give you some stats here. It's actually a pretty simple formula. Revenue minus costs equals profit. And we went into a whole lot of detail about costs in our supply and demand chats, right? And I list your costs here. Okay. Read through those, write them down. You'll see, and there might be some other things in there that go into it, maybe a little bit more specific, but it's a pretty simple thing. And the profit, on the profit side of things, there's only two options that a business can do to try to increase their profit. Number one is they can increase revenue. All right. Which means that they sell more stuff and they've got to change the same price or charge the same price, or they sell the same amount of stuff and charge a higher price. Okay. And those of you guys that remember watching that Pedro video, right? That cheesy one that we showed right before we got out of there, you guys know that he tried charging a higher price. And the tricky part for businesses is he tried charging a higher price, but then people stopped buying his stuff, right? So there's only two ways that I can increase my revenue. And again, that's easier said than done. That's what every business wants to do. And the other side of things is I can decrease my costs. So some ways that I can do it, I can hire fewer workers, I can pay workers less, I can buy cheaper materials, I can upgrade technology, okay, where I don't have to pay workers or whatever. And that's how I can maximize my profit. The formula is pretty simple. Now we can get creative within these types of things to try to increase revenue or decrease costs, but at the end of the day, it's a pretty simple formula. Okay, and again, getting there is pretty straightforward. But again, within that whole thing, there's ways to get creative on how you do that. All right. So if we can understand that stuff, we can start analyzing. And notice I've got a chart set up for you here. If you want to kind of draw your own chart, okay, that's kind of how the notes were set up anyway. But for us to be able to understand how businesses behave, all righty, we have to understand how much competition they have. So, for example, a McDonald's on US 33, the way that they change their price is going to be, and how that affects them is going to be way different than a McDonald's, say, inside an airport where people don't have very many options. Okay. And so if we can understand how much competition a company has, we can start predicting some things that they need to do to try to maximize their profit. Okay, so the four characteristics we'll look at are number of producers, and then down in red here, I kind of give you a little bit more detail. How similar are the products? Can we tell the difference between one to the next? So, for example, products might be very similar. McDonald's versus Burger King's cheeseburgers, right? However, there are some slight differences in there. Would it be easy for a company to compete if they started a new business in that industry? So kind of two extremes, like the fast food industry. We have a lot of local companies around here be very competitive within the industry. For example, like Volcano's lunchtime, right? Ricky's lunchtime, several Hispanic restaurants that are very popular over the lunchtime period, right? And we also have obviously those super multi-billion-dollar type companies, McDonald's, Burger King, Arby's, all those types of places that, you'd think that they would have, they're so famous that they'd be really, really good. We know that that's not necessarily the case. On the flip side, we have like the automobile industry, right? We only have a couple automobile producers, and you've got to be big to compete. So we would say that those are high barriers to entry in those types of markets, right? Making a cell phone. How does a cell phone? What do you have to have a cell phone company? Extremely high costs. You've got to be smart, right? Those are the things that go into barriers for entry. Okay, and then we also have our control over prices. Can I raise my prices and still have people come buy my stuff? All right, is my product a necessity? Is my product, bought because it's cheap? Those types of things. All righty. Now, the thing is, there's going to be different right and wrong answers for each of these. And as you guys will see, as we move forward, answering those, and depending on how you answer those, is going to change how you see things. All right. So the one market structure we'll talk about today, we'll eventually talk about four. Okay. So the one that we're talking about today is referred to as perfect competition. And notice, all right, I have our four characteristics, number of producers, submitted products, barriers to entry, control over prices, and then I give some examples. All right. And so your job with the examples should be to say, all right, does that make sense with everything else over here? All right. And so anyway, the examples will mention those first, right? Agricultural products, and like buying corn from one company to the next, or sugar. Especially if you go to the grocery store and buy milk or sugar, you're going to buy whatever's on sale because we can't tell the difference between milk or sugar. All right, for as far as we're concerned. So unless you're Napoleon Dynamite with milk, right? So anyway, we usually focus on buying whatever's cheap. Well, that means they have zero control over prices. If we buy whatever's the cheapest, right, we're not going to be able to raise our price and have people buy our higher quality stuff. All right. Not like, say, Five Guys versus McDonald's, right? Five Guys has higher quality burgers. They might give you even a little bit more food. All right. Where they are, we can tell the differences between those. Five Guys can charge a higher price than what McDonald's can do. All right. If we're going to buy whatever's cheapest, it's got to be identical. And so, just to show you a quick example here, see if I can pull it up fast. I should have done it sooner. All right, let's just say we're buying something super specific on Amazon. Let's see what happens when I type in hand sanitizer, since we are stuck here in this COVID-19 mess. Okay, so if I buy this thing called hand sanitizer, let's just click on some and see what happens. It doesn't really give me a list of who's selling. It looks like Amazon's the only one selling it. All right. So I'm going to try something different. I'm going to try something a little bit more specific. All right. I'm going to buy a PS4. All right. And if you buy something super specific as a PS4, you can see that you have this option here of 21 used and new offers. All right. And now it gives us our whole number of producers here. All right. And we're going to assume that, for the most part, a PS4 is a PS4. But even within, when we talk about how often this perfect competition happens, even within buying something as similar as a PS4 from one person to the next, you can see we use different terminologies, right? To make my product, if I'm selling it, look better. Right. And even if we were to say, okay, like new, what's another thing we can look at? Those of you that have shopped on Amazon before, you know that we also have these seller ratings, right? And so these seller ratings are extremely important to these companies because they're selling something so similar to other people that they want people to say, hey, I want to buy yours because your seller rating's better and I can trust you. Okay. So for me, for example, if I was going to buy between these two right here, right? This used like new, I might pay a few extra dollars for Save Central because the positive rating is so much better than Sugarcane Alley. Okay, so what I'm trying to get to is that these perfect competition situations, they're pretty rare. All right, and they don't really happen very often, but we do know that we do know how businesses compete. And if you've ever shopped on Amazon before, you get it. Okay, and you understand that. It's good for us because it keeps things really cheap, challenging for producers. All right. Last thing here is I think I've got a couple more things. Yep, it forces producers to be as efficient as possible because they can't raise their prices, right? And the only way that they can try to make more money is to cut costs. Well, cutting costs makes us more efficient. Okay, and again, we don't pay more for a product than what it's worth in the terms of supply and demand because everybody's going to be satisfied in those particular situations. All right. Don't forget, you've got to answer these questions up here. All right. Give me an idea of what you want to do. Don't be afraid to contact me with questions. I will see you guys soon, hopefully. All right. You'll see my face soon at least. And, we'll move forward. We'll get into a little bit less competitive markets, meaning that there's less producers within these markets.